about today because I have my friend Bre Bateman with me, and we are going to be talking all about knives. So just to give you a little bit of an introduction, Bre is actually from the east coast of Canada and now lives in near Calgary, Alberta, in Okotoks, on the west side of Canada. And she is married with 4 kiddos from the age of 12 down to 7. So she is a busy mama. And the thing that brought her into this space is she was looking for some really quality essentials for the kitchen: cast iron pots, good set of Japanese knives, things like that. And when she went looking for them, there wasn't really anything that was affordable for a single income family with 6. And so she decided to design her own. How awesome is that? So we're talking with a real businesswoman who knows everything about knives because she has done the research and she has designed them. So she's going to be giving us a little bit of a walkthrough about this knife set that she has. And we're going to talk about, what favorites are, how to care for them, sharpen them, all of those good things. So when Bre isn't in the kitchen, she's usually out skiing. And I heard that you have a pretty funny story about that first time that you went skiing and you were maybe a little bit sore the next day. Yes. Yeah. And doing some mountain biking. So you guys are kind of outdoorsy, and Alberta is a great place for that. And one more thing about Bre is every Friday night, they have like a family night. And I totally get this because we did this too. You chose, I don't know if you do it every Friday night, but kind of the French fries, chicken nuggets, popcorn, let's have a family movie, dinner off for mom, the kids are happy. We chose to do homemade pizzas, and same thing, we did a movie night. And now for me, my kids, I have 3 kids, and the youngest is like 12 and a half. So I'll just say they're all teenagers now. And the oldest one drives them all to youth group on Friday nights. So it really has become date night for my husband and I because we get the house to ourselves. But it's certainly been fun incorporating that because, figuring out what to cook in the kitchen is sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes it's exhausting. That's a whole other story. We are going to talk about tools to make it easier for you to be able to do something what Bre is really passionate about. Her company is called The Shared Table. And she is all about bringing people together at the dinner table, not only for good food, but also for creating good memories and for being able to bridge kind of old recipes and new recipes and entice your taste buds and have fun cooking in the kitchen again. So welcome, Bre, to our Live in the Kitchen. And as you can see, it's really sunny here. I've got the sunshine streaming in through my window, which is okay. But Bre, why don't you tell us, I have a set here, you have a set there, and between the two of us, we'll kind of show off some of the knives. Why don't you give us a little, I'm going to say that most people just want to know about what knife to use, how to use it well. But some people, they're beautiful knives. They're really well designed. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the actual knives and how you came across designing them and what's unique about them, and then we can talk about which one we're going to use for which purpose in the kitchen.
Sounds great, Lisa. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So as Lisa said, keep my knives stable. My name is Bre, and I am the owner of The Shared Table. And so, like Lisa also said, we're going to talk about my Damascus steel knives. And Damascus steel is really unique in that the way that it is formed is basically through layers of steel. So my Damascus knives actually have 67 layers of steel. And it's the process of the layering and the forging that creates the Damascus knife itself. And so I'll zoom in here. I'm not sure if you can see, but you can see the layers of the steel right here as well. It's a really pretty sort of unique design. And it just really enforces the strength of the steel and the longevity of the knife itself. And so I love Damascus steel knives. I always wanted a set in my own home, but as Lisa said, we are a family of 6, and it just was never going to be in the budget. And I thought there had to be a better way to make this possible. And I couldn't really find one. So that's when I decided to design them. And the whole idea behind the share table is to bring really well-made kitchen, everyday use things. So knives, pots, things like that, that would typically be a rather big expense, but a more affordable price point, but still maintain the incredible quality that they are known for. And so all of my knives are the same with what they are created of, the raw elements. So as I said, it is Damascus steel, and it's 67 layers of Damascus steel. And then all of my knives also have this sushimi finish, which, if I can hopefully show you guys, is these little dimples essentially on the knife themselves. And what that does is when you do your chopping and your cutting and your slicing, it creates a gap between the food you're cutting and the knife, so that things don't stick to it. It just slides off. So it's just a convenience thing, and it's really smart, quite frankly. And it also makes it look really cool too. And so that's called a sushimi finish, and it's a Japanese style of finish. All of my knives are a Japanese blade, but I actually designed the handle a little bit different than what you would typically find on a Japanese style knife. And I did that for a few reasons. I find when I was doing lots of my chopping and my cutting, I would always get like a little sore on my finger here from where I would hold the knife, because the proper way to hold a knife is you grip it like that, and then you wrap your pointer finger around what's called the bolster, which is this point right here on the knife. And I was getting a sore there. So what I did is I enlarged the bolster on my knife. So it's a more comfortable grip when you do your cutting and your chopping and your slicing, no matter the size of the knife. And so that just creates a little bit more of a differentiation between a standard Japanese handle and what we would call a Western handle. All of my knives are also full tang, so that means the blade runs right through the whole knife itself, which is a great thing. And then they're also all triple riveted, so that this handle, which is actually North American desert ironwood, is fully secure, so it's not going to wobble or break loose or anything like that. The thing that's really cool about ironwood also is that it's very dense. So it's a really durable wood that will outlast pretty much anything. And so it really complements the blade as well. So together it's like the perfect combination. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about the knife in particular.
I just want to jump in actually and just comment a little history about how I got Bre's knife set. So of course I saw them. I think we had kind of like a little mini market, and Bre was talking about them, and I was like, you know what? I've had my knife set probably since I got married, like 22 years ago, and it's actually, I had the knife block over there. I think it's KitchenAid. It's probably from Costco. Okay, I've been very happy with it. It kind of did everything that I wanted, but I was looking at her knives, and one, they're gorgeous. Two, I'm teaching culinary nutrition. I thought, you know what, I probably could use some good knives. And so for Christmas, my husband said, would you like for Christmas? And I said, a knife set. Even gave him the website. Well, guess what? Bre was sold out. So my husband, being the resourceful man that he is, went to another store. And I'll just say it, he went to Crate and Barrel, and he found a set of 3 knives, and he bought them for me. And they were over $500 for 3. Okay. But then he got the email saying, oh, I'm sorry, they're not going to come in until February. So for Christmas, I opened up this very light box, and there was a picture of these knives. And he's like, I'm sorry, they're not going to be here till February. And then he got an email and said, oh, actually, there's been a delay. They're not coming until April. And so I'm like, well, you know what? I wonder if Bre has some more in stock. And so I went to her website. I'm like, they're here. And I said, honey, I said, look at this. I'm actually going to get 5 knives, plus the wood block, plus kitchen shears, plus the whetstone for less than the 3 knives from Crate and Barrel. And he was very happy with that. And so he said, go for it. So I returned the knives that I didn't even get, and I got even more value than what we were willing to invest at the time. And so I am thrilled. And the first time I used it, I have to say, I was cutting a carrot, and I'm like, tastes like butter. Like it, you know, I was having to chop before, and this time it was so easy. It was
Yeah, yeah.
wonderful. So definitely high quality. I'm really happy with them, and very affordable. So you have done your homework. You have provided, right, something that's functional and affordable, you know, for, again, the average woman who just wants to have good knives. And you don't have to be, you know, a chef. You don't have to, you know, be someone whose profession it is to do this. It really is for the everyday woman who wants to, you know, not struggle in the kitchen, and have something that's beautiful and functional at the same time.
Absolutely. And something I always say is that a sharp knife is much more safe than a dull knife. You have a lot more control with the blade of the sharp knife because you know it's going to go through whatever you're cooking. Whereas typically when you have a duller knife, you really have to press, things fall, things slide, and that's when accidents happen. But to sort of back up a little bit, I have got a lot of questions about how can I offer such a quality set of knives at such a reasonable price point? And the answer is very simple. It's because it's just me. It goes from me to my designer, back to me. There's no in-between man. There's no brick and mortar. There's no big store that I'm selling to. So my savings are your savings, essentially, is how I sort of word it to people. It's something that I love being able to do. Yeah, I had a lot of people say, oh, you could raise your prices and still sell lots. I could, but I don't want to, because the whole goal of the share table is to take really good quality cooking essentials and make them affordable to anybody who wants them. And I think I know the set of knives that you're talking about, Lisa, and I'm really happy with the quality of mine, and I feel like it matches all the quality of those ones as well. And yeah, it's been a really great journey, sort of designing them and putting all the elements together, and then watching them sort of be created in design, like these ideas, and then having them come to life is a beautiful thing to be a part of too.
Awesome. Well, why don't you get us started and take us through, you have 2 sizes of chef knife. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what a chef knife is used for? What are your favorite things to use them? Anything that we might need to know about a chef knife?
Absolutely. So the one I've been holding while I was talking, this is an 8-inch chef knife. And I also have a smaller version of that, which is a 6.5-inch chef knife. So the whole idea behind a chef knife is when you do your cutting, it's going to move my cutting board here. It has the curved blade here, the curved edge. And so when you do your chopping, you point it and then you just rock it. So you can get those really fine cuts, the fine dice, all of those sorts of things. Just going to get that clean there. It is, again, 6.5 inches, and it's all the same elements as all the other knives as far as the 67 layers of Damascus steel. The big guy here, which I call the big kahuna in our house because it's 8 inches and it's a heavy duty knife. It's got a really good weight to it, which helps when you do your cutting, because with a sharp blade, when your knife is right and balanced, it just sort of glides through. So there's no real having to push. The weight of the knife will do the cutting for you in most cases. This is really great for things like when you're doing your carving of your turkey or your roasts or your big sort of cuts of meat. This is going to be your go-to friend. I love my chef knife. I use it for more than just the big cuts. I find I do kind of everything with it, to be perfectly honest. And then this is just a smaller version of that. Some people just prefer a shorter blade, which is perfectly fine. Everybody has a knife that they sort of go to, that they love. And I find that my chef knives are probably the 2 that I love the most because they're just very versatile in that sense. But I do want to actually point out as well that you'll notice that the colors of the wood here on the handles are slightly different. And that's because, put this down before I cut myself, the desert ironwood is by nature a very diverse wood in its coloring and its tone and its texture. And so depending on the environment that the wood is grown in, that it sort of develops in, you're going to get different types of coloring. And I think that's just a beautiful thing when it comes to the knives. It just sort of adds a little bit of unique flair to the handles as well. And
okay,
that's
so we don't have to worry that we're discoloring our knife handles or anything like that. They are uniquely created.
Yeah, they're all, every piece of ironwood is going to be a little bit different, because it really does matter on the environment that the wood is grown in, the temperature, the soil, things of that nature. All of that will directly affect the coloring of the wood. But I actually love that. I just feel like it's a beautiful thing. I think they're all really unique in their way that their handle is created.
All right.
So those are my chef's knives.
Okay, before we move on to the next one, I'm just going to show people, this morning I harvested some Thai basil from my little indoor garden. And so if you've ever been using herbs and you're wondering the best way to cut them up, actually, sometimes I just use the kitchen shears. I just cut them, literally, I cut them. But one of the ways that you can also do this is if you layer them and then you roll it, it makes it very easy to cut. And this is where the chef knife comes in. Okay, so you want to make sure that, as Bre said, you want to make sure that the tip stays on the cutting board and it's a rocking, you're not doing that, not with this knife. Okay, and so you're rocking it, and like literally you just mince up your, there, I've just minced a whole bunch of basil. Now I can add that fresh to my dish. So really quick and simple, and a great way, so you can do it with vegetables, fruits, your herbs and spices, as Bre said, meat. I had to cut through some frozen chicken breast. What a dream. I was thinking I might have to thaw it first, and then I just did this. I'm like, nope, don't need to thaw it. This did beautiful work. Yeah. So, okay, so what's next?
Next knife I'm going to talk about will be our 7-inch Santoku knife. And the Santoku knife is really unique to sort of a Japanese style of knife, because the Santoku means that it's multi-purpose, really, is what the term means. But what makes a Santoku knife different than a chef knife is the blade. So the Santoku knife is a straight blade. There's no curve at the end. So the Santoku knife is really great for lots of your chopping. So you're chopping onions, or you're chopping carrots, or you're chopping whatever you're using to get ready to cook your meal. This is going to be your go-to friend for that. It's a bit smaller. So instead of the 8-inch, it's a 7-inch. So it's a little bit smaller of a blade itself. But it has, again, all the same features, the 67 layers of steel, the sushimi finish, the desert ironwood handle as well. I love my Santoku knife. My best friend, this is her go-to. This is what she uses for everything. There's no right or wrong reason. You can use really a knife for whatever you really need, but you kind of find a favorite that you love. And so a lot of people love the Santoku because it's a simple up and down chopping motion. There's no rocking with this one.
Okay. And yeah, and that's one thing that I noticed when I was, as you were talking before, I was just cutting my carrot into coins. And when I got to the thicker part of the carrot, right, I really had to lift that knife, right? And now I'm kind of awkward, right? So I think, again, depending on the size of the food that you're doing, switching to the Santoku, did I say it right?
Yeah, Santoku.
I'm now speaking Japanese. Who knew?
Yeah, look at you.
Yeah, and so for that, right, then you can do the chopping, and it's beautiful. And you get the sound, if you like the sound. I know some people like the sound. They just want to sound like they're busy in the kitchen. Speaking of chopping, I have a question for you. Is because so I'm looking at the comments coming in. So there's a question: will it dull your knife if you use, like, if you don't use a cutting board, and maybe like I'm chopping right on my granite countertop? Can you do that? Is it advised? Does it matter? Do you have to use wood? Can you use plastic? Does it matter what you're actually cutting on?
That is a great question, Lisa. So personally, I always suggest cutting on wood. And because wood is a much more softer natural fiber, it's not going to dull your knives as fast. You can cut on pretty much anything. I really do recommend staying away from the glass cutting boards. I know that they're easy to throw in the dishwasher because you can sanitize them, especially if you're using meat. But I would really suggest not using glass because it's very hard on any blade, whether it's Damascus steel or whatever you're cooking on or chopping with. A really hard surface is going to naturally dull your blade faster. So I always recommend a wood cutting board. You can certainly use like a plastic one. That's perfectly fine too. And by plastic, I mean like the ones that are like, you know, a 1/4 inch plastic sort of thing. With my knives, because they are so sharp, sometimes you can find the really, really thin plastic ones. I think they're called like a cutting mat. Those are okay. I just would caution you. These knives, I actually chopped right through the mat when I was first using it. I didn't even pay attention. I just was chopping. And then my daughter was like, Mom, you cut the counter. And I said, what? And I looked and it chopped through the cutting mat. So I try to steer away from the cutting mats. And I always recommend, like I say, a wood, or if you have like a plastic, but I probably would steer away from a glass cutting board. And as far as the countertop being marble or granite, everybody has a different idea. Some people don't mind cutting on there. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. It's not going to like wreck your knives, but again, it will by nature or dull your knives much faster than if you were to use a wood cutting board, for example. And it also, depending on the nature of your wood or of your countertop, it might damage your countertop as well. And that would just be really tragic to damage your countertop. So
yeah, if you have a laminate countertop, definitely do not cut on the laminate countertop. You will score it and have scratches.
That's what I did. I have a laminate countertop and I actually nicked the top layer of it. And then my husband had to get like a sealant because the knife went right through the cutting mat. So word to the wise.
There we go. All right. We've gone through 2 chef knives. That's a Tuco knife. What's up next?
Next knife we're going to talk about is this guy. So this is the 5-inch utility knife, or I call it the everyday knife. So it is sort of in the shape of a chef knife where it has the curved edge, but I don't use it as a chef knife. I just use it if I'm doing, I'm going to put my knife back here, just for smaller jobs in the kitchen. So if I'm, you know, chopping garlic, for example, or ginger, or sort of the smaller jobs that I probably wouldn't want to pull for the big knife for, or the 2-3 other size, I would use for this one. This is sort of the go-to. This is what my mom likes, for example, because she finds that it's the right size blade for her. So it's kind of the do-all knife, the everyday, the utility, the kind of the workhorse sometimes, because it's the one you just kind of grab when you need a quick knife sort of thing. Okay.
Is there anything that it can't do or isn't that you wouldn't recommend it for, or it really can do everything?
I mean, it can pretty much do anything. The technique that you use it for. So for example, my husband was doing, like we have one of like those big smokers, and he was doing a big brisket. And so he tried to use it to cut off some of the fat cap on the brisket, and it just couldn't quite do that job. He went for the big guy, the big chef knife for that. So, I mean, I use it a lot if I'm chopping veggies too. Like it's one actually that my kids like to use. I like my kids to learn knife safety. So my kids actually use these knives, and it's one that I feel confident with them using because it's not overly big. It's not, I mean, it is still very sharp, but you can have a bit more control if the bigger knives sort of are a little bit intimidating too as well.
Okay. And speaking of knife safety, so say, for example, someone is cutting carrot sticks, right? I used to, just not even knowing, I used to cut the carrot in half, okay? And then I would have the wobbly end, and I was like trying to cut little sections of it, okay? And you know what? All you have to do is rotate, put the flat end on your cutting board, no more wobbles. Like, again, nobody gave us a manual to learn how to do some of these things. At least I didn't get one when I came out on my own, not when I got married, not when I had kids, right? And so the other thing is when maybe I shouldn't say this. The I use it, this was so sharp. I wasn't really paying attention, and I cut the end of my fingernail, just the nail. I cut the end of the fingernail because I wasn't curling my fingers. So when you're doing close work, especially in vegetables, I'm just going to zoom in here on my fingers. I will do another one where like I zoom in on the cutting board. I just don't have the equipment set up, but you need to curl your fingers away because you don't want to chop off the ends. These are really sharp. And so when you're doing that, you just want to be a little bit careful. But I have to say, I can tell the difference between this and the other knife that I was using, because the other knife, I was really having to push down to chop these carrot sticks. And this one, it's so effortless.
Yes.
The effortless part, that made it so worthwhile.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So with that, why don't we chat about the last knife here in the block, the paring knife.
So this knife is the paring knife, and a paring knife is sort of self-explanatory. This is good for the things in your kitchen, like peeling potatoes or all the small jobs in your kitchen, really. I call this one the quintessential grandma knife, because when I was younger, my grandma, all she ever used was a paring knife. It didn't matter what her job was. The paring knife was always in the hand, and if it wasn't, it was in the sink clean. This is sort of for all of, like I say, the smaller jobs in your kitchen. So like chopping garlic, for example, or mincing herbs or things of that nature, peeling potatoes, those sorts of things. You wouldn't want to use this guy, if you were going to carve a turkey or, get a roast ready to go into the oven. This is for the smaller jobs, but it doesn't lack in the quality. It's the same sort of as the other knives, where it's still the 67 layers of Damascus steel, still the ironwood handle, still triple riveted, but just a much smaller version of the chef knife.
That sounds great. And yeah, I'm just using it right now on an apple.
Yeah.
Super quick. Yeah, it's, I like to think if you take out the top of a strawberry, right, you want something small, you want to be able to maneuver it, right? You're obviously not going to do that with this guy, right? which is why I think some people think, well, I have one knife that I use, why do I need all these extra knives? And they're helpful, and they do have
absolutely
a job.
Yes, and that's
Okay, I have a question. So I also got the shears, and they're very sharp. I love them.
Yes.
I'm interested though. I'm wondering, because I don't know. You have some interesting designs in here. I'm assuming this is like your bottle opener.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
For beer. Okay. Is this like a nutcracker?
Yep, absolutely. Yep, you can use it to do nuts. Yep, absolutely.
Is there anything special about this? I noticed there's a little bump there. Is that just to hold it? Is that to do anything? Tell me about that.
So do you mean like the thing on the very top here?
Yeah.
So I actually use that, what did I use it for the other day? I actually used it when I was getting steaks ready. I actually poked a hole in it and I used it to stick cloves of garlic with it. But that guy here, I'm not entirely sure. I think that is more specifically for design, I guess. But on the blade itself, if you look, like when you open it up, there's like a little, see if I can do this without them, because they come apart as well, so that you can sanitize all of it, so that you don't have to worry about little things getting stuck in the little holes or anything. But there's a little tiny dimple right there, and that's for when you do, like if you're chopping, like if you're like chicken bones, for example, if you want to chop through a bone, that's going to be your friend to do that, because that's actually really sharp as well. And the blades are also serrated so that they're going to kind of cut through whatever you want. I did a spatchcock chicken, which is when you cut out the spine, I think it is, of the chicken, and then you lay it flat. I use these to just cut through that, no problem. And then I gave them a quick wash, and it was like cutting through butter, even though I was cutting through bone. It was just a really easy way to do that. And I I wanted them to be able to come apart so that when you do want to clean them, you can just, you know, give them a quick rinse or wash in the sink, and then you don't have to worry about things getting stuck in there as well. And then, yeah, this is for bottle opening. This is for crushing nuts, those sorts of things. And it's just a really great all-around pair of kitchen shears.
Yeah, absolutely. And I learned something new. I had no idea about that little divot that you talked about for cutting bones. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. So now let's talk about, now that we've made a bit of an investment and we have these beautiful knives, let's talk about caring for them, because there are some do's and don'ts when it comes to cleaning, storing, sharpening, those kinds of things. So walk me through some of the don't do this, instead do this.
Perfect. Yes. So yeah, once you buy your set of knives, because they are a very high quality, high end set of knives, there is a bit of things you need to know to keep them as such. So for example, never, ever, 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 under any circumstance ever, put them in the dishwasher. That is going to be your number one culprit to ruin the steel. It's going to dull your blades, and it's going to mess with the handle, the wood on the handle as well. So never put your knives in the dishwasher. And not, I mean, obviously my knives, but any sort of good knife that you really love, a knife that you've invested in or a knife set, never put your knives in the dishwasher, because the little, I have the little pucks that I sort of use in my dishwasher. It's a very abrasive soap, and that is what is going to wreck your knife. So don't ever do that. So never ever put them in the dishwasher. And then of course, when you notice that they are getting dull, you of course are going to want to sharpen them. But one of the ways that you can keep them from not dulling so fast is by the way you store them. And to store them, I like to store them in a knife block. And this is my acacia wood knife block. It's a very soft wood. And so it's not going to dull your knives when you take them and put them in and out all the time. You don't have to worry about that. And it's also going to whisk away the moisture if there's any that are left on your knife. So what I like to do as soon as I'm done using my knife, if I'm just doing like veggies or that sort of prep, I just give it a quick rinse off with hot soapy water. I give it a quick dry, and I actually put it right back in my block, and I just leave it until I need it again. And I do that with all of them, no matter the size. And then I store them in here. It just sits on my counter. The block itself isn't really huge, and I designed it that way because I like most people probably don't have a ton of counter space. And so this one just sort of fits in a nice little corner, and it doesn't take up a lot of room. So you don't have to worry about it kind of getting in the way.
So same thing with the dishwasher. I'm assuming don't leave this sitting in your sink full of water, waiting. Right. One, it's going to ruin the knife. Two, somebody else is going to put their hand in the sink.
Yes. That actually happened to me. My husband actually also really loves to cook, and I thought I would be a helpful person in the kitchen and do the dishes sort of as he was sort of cooking. And I stuck my hand in the hot soapy water, and I got a nice cut on my hand because the knife was sitting in there. And to his merit, he had just put it in there and it was gonna tell me, but I just kind of went in there really quick and thought I would beat him to it. So yes, you're absolutely right, Lisa. Yes, you don't want to leave them in the water. You want to give them a quick rinse off or wash and put them away. But really the safety factor comes in is you don't know. I mean, you might put your hand in there and you might even grab the blade by accident, sort of thing, right? So you never want to leave them in water also. And then, like I said, I learned just a quick dry, and then I put them right back into the wood block.
Okay. So now, so something that I had to learn, sharpening knives, because maybe some of you have something like this, right? Like a little knife sharpener that has a round, you know, 2 sets of stones, and you just run your knife through. So tell me why this is a bad idea.
So those, because those, I mean, it's not horrible. It's if it's what you have, then go with it, but it's not going to prolong the longevity of your blade, because you're not actually sharpening the blade or straightening it. You're just sort of knocking off a layer of sort of built up from using it, you're just sort of knocking off a layer of steel essentially. So to maintain the sharpness of your knife, you want to use a whetstone. And a whetstone is something that I had to also learn about. So you're not alone in that, Lisa. I just actually always used like a rod. And a rod is not bad, but a rod doesn't actually sharpen. It actually just straightens the blade. So that when you go to sharpen, you get a better result. So a whetstone, and it's W-H-E-T, not W-E-T. So wet, W-H-E-T, whetstone. It's very simple to use. It's not, at first I was a little intimidated by it because I thought, oh my gosh, that's something that only chefs use, but it's not. And it's not very big. It just sits in my drawer when I'm not using it. But what you do is you actually take the whetstone out and you soak it in water. And what happens is there's little bubbles that come out. Once the bubbles stop bubbling up, I give it about 10 minutes and then you're good to go. And so mine comes with little silicone, sorry, I just gotta get that on there. There we go. Silicone holders essentially. And it also comes with the wood stand as well. So you put it into the stand with silicone holders like this. And this one has been soaking. I had it soaking for about 10 minutes before we started here. And so you get it wet. So then what you do is my whetstone also comes with this guide. And it might look small, but it is very important. This is going to be your blade or your knife guide. So this actually goes onto your blade like this, flips on like that. And then what you do, this allows your blade to be at the right angle to maintain the right sharpness for the knives. So then all you do is you just go back, you pull back like that, and that at the right angle is going to maintain the integrity of the blade and of the edge itself. And then you're going to get like a little bit of a water, how do I say it? Like a little bit of a pool of water, and that's good because that's the natural grit that's being released from the whetstone itself, and that's what's going to help your blade stay sharp as well. So it's not difficult. And some professional chefs, they have like this crazy fast method that, you know, takes them no time. But as a mom and as someone who just cooks for my family, I'm not as fast as them, but it's not a hard chore to do at all. And then once you're done on one side, you flip it over to the other, which is the finishing side. And then you just finish it off. And that's
pause just for a sec.
Yep.
So once I'm done one side of the knife though, I flip the knife and I do the other side of the knife.
You flip the knife, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So you do one side of the knife completely, both sides. Once you've done that, then you flip your whetstone over and you use the finishing side, and that's going to sort of take away all of the rough that the coarser side was able to take away and to replenish the blade. And then that's really all there is to it. It is not rocket science. It's just very simple, but it's not something that a lot of people know how to do. But once you do it a few times, it's like riding a bike. It just becomes a very natural thing to do.
Okay, do you do it once a month? Do you do it as needed? What's the schedule like for sharpening?
So that is a question that kind of depends on how much you cook. So for me in my home and for my business, because I do a lot of cooking throughout the day as well, I actually do mine about once every 2 weeks, just a really quick sharp, just because A, I like a very sharp knife, but B, because it just helps prolong the longevity of the blade. If you're not a person that cooks every day, like I cook 3 to 4 meals a day for my blog and for my Instagram. And it's like I cook my dinner for my family every night, those sorts of things. Maybe like once a month, maybe once every couple months. It doesn't have to be a regular thing. So that's very dependent on how much you're going to use your knife, because obviously as someone who uses my knives all day, every day, basically, there's a bit more maintenance that I need to do. But for the regular sort of mom, like I think, for you, Lisa, I would suggest once a month, maybe once every month and a half, 2 months, but just to give your blade a feel. And if you think, it's not really as sharp as I remember being, a really quick go on the whetstone and you're right back in business.
Okay. And then after I've done the white side and the blue side, do I need to polish it, or we're clean it, or we're good to go?
All I do, I run it under hot soapy water, and then I take a wet or a dry a dishcloth, dry it off, put it right back in my knife block, and I'm all set.
Okay. Can you over sharpen a knife?
If you do it too much, it's not necessarily over sharpening. It's that the edges on the knife aren't going to be even. So that's what you're going to find. So I usually recommend 4 to 5 times of using the whetstone and then giving it a touch, and then just kind of doing it one by one. And then over time, you'll get the feel for it. But until you kind of know, kind of like people who eyeball a recipe versus people who measure everything. I always eyeball stuff because you've done it a lot of times. You just kind of know now. That's the sort of same thing. So I would just, whatever you do on one side, if you do run it through, say 4 or 5 times on one side, flip it over, run it 4 or 5 times on the other side, just to keep that blade, that edge even.
Okay. That sounds good. I'm just looking over to see if we had any more questions or comments.
Yeah.
Okay. And it looks good. Looks like we've cleared them all up.
Wonderful.
So yeah, and if there are any questions that come in after, I will contact Bre and I will let you know what the answers are. Do you have, I noticed one thing that I do use a fair amount that isn't in this set is a bread knife. Do you still use these, or do you have another separate bread knife that you use? Because it's serrated, right? And so it just kind of keeps the form of cakes and buns and all that kind of stuff. Or are these sharp enough that they'll just do the job for you?
So I don't have a specific bread knife. And the reason is because the bread knife that I have, it's really long and it didn't really fit nicely in the block, to be perfectly honest. So I opted for not using a bread knife. You can totally use these for bread. I do. I also have a serrated bread knife that I use that I think I got it when we were married. It was a gift from my grandmother that I use as a bread knife as well. I use that also if I'm cutting tomatoes. Sometimes you want a bit of a serrated edge when you do a tomato as well. So this set doesn't actually have a bread knife, mostly because it wouldn't fit in the knife block and sort of the look that I was going for. So yeah, there's no bread knife. It will cut bread, no problem, but it's not the serrated blade that you would typically use to cut bread.
Yeah. But for everything else, this is kind of an all-around great set to have in your kitchen. And I laugh because I was doing some research before the call and looking at all the different knives. And I mean, my goodness, they actually have a knife that's called a tomato knife, just to use to cut tomatoes. Okay. Yeah. Now I know some of you love tomatoes, but to have a knife that has one purpose. I'm a multi-purpose, let's be very practical. I do not have a tomato knife. There are some things that you don't need, that are gadgets in your kitchen that probably are cluttering up your drawer, and you can take a look to see if you're ready to move on to something like this. You can contact Bre. Her website is www.thesharedtable.ca, because we are in Canada. She does offer free shipping in Canada, and the US, it's just a flat rate, $19.95, so really reasonable. And you actually get a discount if you're from the States because it's in Canadian dollars, so you're welcome. And if you want to get some more information from Bre, you can email her directly, or I can pass on any comments or questions. We'd be happy to continue with that. And again, for me, my passion is really to help teach women, fill in some of the nutritional gaps that might be happening. As I've said, I didn't get a manual when I moved out, when I became a wife, when I became a mom, of, how to cook, what's important in having fresh food versus all the processed food that is readily available, highly marketed, and really terrible for your health. Filling in those gaps. being able to hold people accountable on their health journey, walking them through, giving them that knowledge, giving them some skills. I actually do have homework in my 12-week online course, the Complete Healthy Kitchen program. And one of my clients, Ange, recently said her favorite part was the cooking demos and the recipe assignment homework because it got her in the kitchen. It was a lot of fun. She made new recipes that she knew were healthy and they actually taste good, which is the whole point. And that was one of the highlights. So if you'd like more information on the Complete Healthy Kitchen program, contact me. I'd be happy to give you some more details and help you out if that's something that you are looking for on your health journey. So thank you so much for your time this morning, Bre. I learned a lot. I hope our audience did too, as they learn about making a bit of an investment and having a good set of knives. I highly recommend Bre Bateman from The Shared Table, and I hope you give them a try too. So thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And again, thank you, Bre, for joining me for our little chat and our demo. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I thought it was really great. It was a great day.
All right. Thanks so much.